Cool. So, morning, welcome to our Intune Reporting webinar. Today you're joined by myself, Ricky Patel, pre-sales lead here at PowerOn, coming from more of a delivery technical background, but predominantly in that pre-sales space today. But we're also joined by Steve Beaumont.
Good morning, everybody. So as Rick says, my name's Steve Beaumont. I'm again one of the solutions consultants at PowerOn, so specialising in everything device management.
Cool. So in today's agenda, we really want to go through what the Intune Reporting Solution is. Steve's doing the honour of going through a live demonstration with us, and then we'll kind of go into the benefits, the use cases, and open the floor to any questions that you may have. Feel free to submit any questions in the chat, and we'll get to them towards the end of the session, but feel free to kind of pop them in at any point. But let's really delve into what the Intune Reporting Solution is. So it is an enhanced reporting experience in comparison to what the native reporting solution is within the Intune space. It goes beyond the basics into kind of more of that in-depth insights as to what's going on within the space in more of a graphical way, really. What it really enables you to do is monitor things like Windows updates, statuses, ensuring that devices are up to date and secure, allowing you to no longer really have to sift through multiple sets of data or to collate various reports together, giving you a very quick access, visual graphical way to get insights into what's going on within your Intune environment without actually having to access it yourselves. What it looks like you can see on the screen, it's quite simple to navigate around with those tabs on the left hand side, nice kind of integrated colors to support some of the graphics that are in place in the sense of kind of compliant versus non-compliant and those types of things, as well as some of those filtering options that you may see towards the top of the screen. But I don't want to take too much away from Steve, and Steve will be going through this in a lot more depth. But yeah, this is kind of just a quick insight as to kind of what you'll be going through shortly. So the solution architecture itself, so in order for the information to be displayed in the way that it is, one of the big factors is being able to extract that information from the devices within your Intune environment. And by doing so, the information that is uploaded from the devices is uploaded within to Log Analytics and Graph, making that information accessible from both Intune and Power BI to read. It then allows us to then translate that information into more graphical images, making it more understandable to us to see, and to really get an understanding as to maybe what is up to date, what isn't up to date, what's compliant, and those types of bits to have a really good insight as to what's going on from what you say is a single pane of glass, I guess. So some of the considerations, so Power BI licensing is required. There is a range of different licensing that you can choose from to access this report, like you see on the screen. But one of the other key factors is really the data latency types. So PowerOn recommends that there is 2 scheduled updates per day. We tend to see from end user client experiences so far that maybe one of those schedules is at the beginning of the day before the wider team starts. Then another round, maybe midday, just so you can see kind of what's going on across that morning section of the day. But what it really won't prevent you to do is carry out those manual refreshes yourselves. But over to you, Steve.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ricky. Right. Let me share my screen. Excellent. Hopefully that's coming through for everyone. So, as Ricky mentioned earlier and just showed you that brief glimpse of this initial dashboard, this is the landing page. And the way we've structured this within Power BI is to be able to give very quick, easy to read, at a glance information for a multitude of different roles within a business. So this isn't designed to be a deep technical data store with every single last bit of granular information in lots of tables. It's about being able to get that 1,000-foot view very quickly of the most important information and then start to drill down into it. So on this landing overview page, we get a very quick glance of just how many devices are in the environment, what type of breakdown in terms of Windows versus iOS and Android do we have, how many models, and then the more key important things are things like how compliant are these devices and what are the encryption states. And the good thing is with it being used in Power BI, all of these are interactive and everything can be filtered. So if I wanted to just have a bit more of a look and focus on the non-encrypted devices, you can see how it immediately starts to reduce everything down to filter all the different visuals so that we're just focused on what we've clicked on, which is the non-encrypted. So now we can start to see, well, actually, this has been driven across. There's a Dell that's non-encrypted and a specific Microsoft device. So it gives us a little bit more of a view with it being interactive and drill downs, what we can actually see and filter it to what we need to see at the time. Now, like I say, this is that first insight view, just that quick snapshot. How are we doing? Are we doing well on some of the key metrics around compliance and encryption? What are we doing in terms of our split of devices? But then we obviously want to start drilling down into that information a bit more. So this is where we do start to surface up that little bit more of the information. So again, similar sorts of views in case we want to filter and concentrate on the various things like the actual encryption state and stuff. So I can obviously click on that one again, and now I can start to see exactly what them two devices are. And you can see there's various information then that is brought through on here in terms of the manufacturers, things like serial numbers, when it was enrolled, and more importantly, when was it last synced into the Intune service. So we can see that these are a little bit behind now. So this is my development environment. So it's probably not just on a sync recently because I've been doing bits and pieces with it. But even so, they would give me a little bit of a concern to think, well, actually, they've not talked to the Intune service in quite some time. So maybe it's not a case of they're not encrypted, but maybe they were just test devices that were done, or they were incapable, as we see with the Sage Accounts VM that I'll show you in a little bit. But it gives me an idea of where I need to focus on to get that bit more information. Now, I can obviously quickly unfilter for a lot of this lot. Actually, I was on the encrypted state, so let me just reset that one and have all of the information. And again, while it allows me to filter through various different things, there's other ways that we allow you to slice and dice this information. So we either have the built-in Power BI filters on the right-hand side, which can sometimes be a little bit complex to use and a bit horrible to try and get rid of if you need to try and filter, or we have this flyout panel that we can actually then set our own custom filters on. So maybe we want to focus on just having actually the Dell devices displayed. So let's filter it by that. And maybe we want to make sure that we're only doing ones which are Azure ID joined. In this environment, I only have Azure ID joined, but you get the idea. And that again has now filtered this information down a little bit more. Like anything that I keep on stressing with Power BI, this is about how we use this information to get the information we need first and foremost. So I have this overview with enough information to start digging in, and then I can go deeper and further. So if I right click onto the PC for Simon, I can drill through. I can go into individual reports, and we'll see some of these ones around the Windows updates and Windows 11 readiness in a second. But if I was to drill down, it showed me the information for just this individual device that I've clicked on. Or I can go to device details, which you'll notice is not on the left-hand pane. So device details is again just about drilling down further and further into this information to give us a lot more granular information as we need, depending on the type of person we are that's reporting on this. So now I have even more information. I can start to see things around when it was enrolled in autopilot, what's its current different encryption methods and states, what's its TPM, disk space, as well as a lot of the metrics that we see within the Intune for the endpoint analytics in terms of boot times, responsiveness, blue screens of deaths, which thankfully for Simeon's device, he has not had any blue screens of deaths. But you get the idea that we're now pulling out and surfacing a load more information that could be more useful for a deeper techie level than anything. Or if we're doing project management and trying to work out what devices would be good to do on a refreshment cycle, which ones are performing the worst, and so on. Now, if I go back to the main dashboard, so we've done this view of having that immediate information at the dashboard level, drilling down into a bit more information that we can start to filter through. Again, all these tables can be nicely sorted and filtered. So maybe I just want to concentrate on which ones haven't talked to the backend service in a while. So there we go. We've got quite a few devices that we probably want to just go and check with users to make sure that they're not stale objects anymore. But then more importantly, when it comes to environment management, is how we're doing for Windows updates. So pulling a lot of this information from the Windows Update for Business service, combining it with the information within Intune, we now get a very quick glance of how exactly that we are standing for patching within our environments. So you can see here we've got both a breakdown, so we've got a lovely idea of exactly the type of quantity of devices that are on which exact release of Windows, broken down by actual Windows version release as well, so 10 versus 11, and then their sub-SKU version. We also get the percentage, so we get an overall view of how many is missing it, and we also get the active alerts. So this is one thing that is always hidden away in the background, and when we're trying to actually understand why devices maybe aren't installing, so maybe why this one on or these two are still back on December, then we actually now get proper descriptive information that the device sends up to the service in terms of why it wasn't able to install the updates in the first place. Now, this again is all filterable. So if we do start to go through and we want to understand which one it was, so it's not the January one, it's not the December ones, it's not the blank ones, and it's probably not the Windows Insider one. No, it is actually one of the most up-to-date ones. So that was the last ever message that was sent through. But again, I can filter on it, see which device it is, any extra information, and just aids within that troubleshooting aspect without having to dig through the various consoles or go to log analytics and run lots of queries. Again, all of this lot also has a search bar at the top. So if I was trying to work with a specific user, so actually maybe I want to search on my device, then it'll allow us to filter down quite easily. Now it is displaying two devices for me. One's a Windows 365 box and one is my actual physical laptop that I'm on at the minute. But again, we get to see that information, we can see that those devices are nice and perfectly updated as they should be. Now, while that information on there, let me just reset all my filters. While that information on there, again, gives you some quite good granular detail into exactly how your estate is being patched, how up to date you are, again, with things like support statuses of the various different Windows builds. It's sometimes better to see in an even more granular level across different months to see exactly how well you're patching. So we're taking again some of that data and just representing it in a slightly different way. So you can start to see how well you're patching across this current month. So these are all the patches released for January. It's not yet been Patch Tuesday, so therefore we're not actually, I don't think it's been Patch Tuesday. We're not on the second Tuesday of the month, are we? No, we're not. So that was this month's or last month's January's updates. We're looking very good at patching across them. Again, we can see there's just basically a couple that are waiting to install, or the update unknown columns. So we get to see exactly which stage of which updates are across the environment, and then historically. So if we want to see what we were doing in December, or then November, or then earlier than November, you get the idea. We can now start to see a historical view of updates for our environment across time and across different updates released for our environment, and how many were applicable and how many did actually get installed. Now, Windows 11 readiness is an interesting one because, as everyone's fully aware, we have up until October next year to get Windows 11 on before Windows 10 becomes unsupported. So we pulled this one in from the metrics within Intune just to again make it a little bit easier to start planning your upgrades and your migrations now. Now, my environment doesn't have much data. However, if you can imagine that if you've got plenty of devices on Windows 10, our environment, we only have one device still left on Windows 10, then you would see a lot more information in here. And what this is designed to do is actually give you both the go or no-go decision. So is a device compatible? Yes, fine, we should be able to put that into the cycle to get it upgraded. Or is it incompatible? These are the ones we want to focus on. So we will get this complete breakdown of which ones are compatible or non-compatible. And then we also get the reason for that incompatibility surfaced directly to you. So I think it's still not massively aware and known that a lot of the hardware that Windows 10 is running on may not be actually physically capable of running Windows 11. So there are various things within either the CPU type. So if it is an older legacy CPU, it might be performing absolutely fine on Windows 10, functions absolutely perfectly, but it's not supported for Windows 11. So any device that has an older CPU generation in there, we capture, we surface, we tell you that the CPU itself can't be done anything about, that hardware is going to need physically replacing. We also pull back metrics around the TPM. So you can see on this one, it's a VM, which means it hasn't actually got either virtual TPM or physical TPM2 chip, and therefore secure boot is not enabled either on it. So those two items in themselves are blocking this virtual machine from being upgraded to Windows 11. And then we do some custom checks based on our experience, where we know things like the drive space. If there's less than 12 gig or there's less than 25% disk space left on the drive, they can cause issues. While they may not be blockers in its entirety, we're still going to surface that information up to make sure you have as much success as possible in upgrading these devices. So that's the Windows 11 readiness side. And again, we just break it down so you can see the different manufacturers and the different ones you're going to have to focus on potentially replacing. And then finally, we pulled some of the newer feature sets from the Intune in terms of the drive and firmware management out into reporting to make life a little bit easier as well. So again, we broke it down so you've got lots of lovely states. So you can see whether things have been cancelled or whether it's just generally crashed. Again, we're pulling out all the actual information from the service, so we actually get recommendations on things to go try if updates are not succeeding. So it's not just about purely reporting, we're actually giving you advice and information to help you go and remediate these tasks. But then there's a lot of data here, and this is where you probably do use this in much more of a troubleshooting scenario, where you want to check on things like what have we actually got that have failed. So in this environment, we actually only have the 2 updates that have failed, but not on a consistent basis. So we can see that actually they're probably more of a transient error because we are getting successes, just not on a couple of devices. Again, all this lot can be drilled down. So which device was that on? Okay, it was across these 4 different devices. Which ones are having problems and stuff? You can start to drill down and understand exactly what's happening with the data. Now, keep on talking about drill downs and all the things that were in here, and you can see there's an awful lot of information. So while this is designed to both service the needs of management levels, where you might not want them in the Intune console and you don't want to have to constantly go and produce reports and provide them via emails or go and send them on Teams messages. This is now being able to democratize that information and give it to people without having to give them access to the Intune console in the first place. And then secondly, it's sometimes a lot easier. I say sometimes, it is a lot easier to come in here and use this data within the Power BI view than it is to actually go in and try and drag this information out of the Intune console. This is designed to make it easy to access the most relevant information just populated right in front of you, rather than having to drill down 5 or 6 different ways, maybe produce a CSV export in the Intune console to then drop it into Excel to then produce a pivot chart. The other benefit on this one as well is because we have such a huge data source set, you can actually come in and start to look at this information yourself, even if we don't currently surface it. So for example, you won't have seen anything in that report set around the Windows 365 side, but we do actually have this data in the back end. So I can actually go, well, fine, I want to see what my cloud PC device thing is, Maybe I want to go and see actually who are the users of this. So let's go and pick out the users. I'm hoping this demo is going to work on the fly. This is the first time I'm trying this. So let's go and put in there my first name. Now I have got it set on matrix view, which is going to be useless. So if I actually expand this visual at the bottom, and you can see I'm in table view. So apart from me not filtering out the blanks, we can now start to see that the individual Cloud PC names are also matching up to the individual usernames on here. So David's David, James, Ricky, etc. And we can keep on adding and massaging this data as we like. I'm not going to use BitLocker because that wouldn't work on a Cloud PC device anyway. Trying to think of another one while we're here. Device configuration policies won't be linked to it either. I'm going to struggle to show you something of use apart from, say, adding the status to it. But you can see that the information is there. There's lots of things within the actual data store. And obviously, as we progress and make this report better and over time, we're constantly adding new sources of data as they're coming through and looking at ways to link up and display that information. But the data set is quite robust, as you can see from the side, in terms of the things that we go and gather from the graph and the log analytics workspace. Then, Ricky, if I can hand back to you.
Sure thing. So based on kind of what Steve's gone through just there, right? So some of the key benefits that we've heard back from feedback from clients that are already started to use this is it's really helped them consolidate that Intune data into a single view, really extended their kind of monitoring and visibility on understanding what the health of their device is and kind of what state they're in through Windows updates. It's allowed them to investigate and query updates through the reporting data that's available to them to really better understand your device compliance. It's really open to any questions, really. I think there's a couple that have come through in the chat, Steve.
Yep, I'm just having a quick look at them at the moment. I was going to reply to one specifically. So very good question, and a question that I get asked quite some time. Please, for everyone else that's on, if you do have a question, put it into the Q&A channel as quick as possible because we'll rattle through these. The question was around whether we can actually show, or within the reports, can we show a count of all instances of a particular piece of software and version within the environment? Now, I say this is a really good question because this is absolutely key for when you want to do things like Cyber Essentials in the asset management in general, software asset management, and you want to understand whether you have outdated versions, which versions are going to need upgrading, etc. So it's a great question, and in theory, yes, we can. That information is absolutely within the graph. I say in theory though, because it's actually probably one of the hardest things to pull out of the graph and into Power BI due to the volume of the data that's within there. So as it stands at the moment within the report, the classes for the actual what we call the detected apps are disabled because they are the thing that is the most prone to failure on a refresh because Microsoft throttle the back end due to the number of calls required to get that data. However, we can do a customization piece, which just involves a bit of middleware to go and basically request and do the export from the report API, and then we can absolutely ingest that data. So not currently within the report as it stands, but absolutely available as a customization option that we can easily do. And then in the future, we are just trying to work and tweak on something to make that just part of the report. So I hope that answers your question. I'll finish off typing a reply in a moment. So, other questions? So just to make it clear, because one should pop in. All right, I'll just answer this one actually. I'm not familiar with Power BI, but I assume this is a report which Thank you, whoever just moved that one. But I assume this report which Power On have written and are selling to interested customers. Absolutely. Yes, in other words, we've spent quite some time going through the different data sets, creating the underlying data set within Power BI and putting the visuals on top of it. And yes, this is absolutely available for customers to buy and use. So it's actually born out of part of the managed services business that Power On have, and we use it for our managed customers. And we've just evolved this now into a separate standalone offering.
Yeah, just to add on to kind of what Steve said there, the reporting sets for this is a one-off cost. There's time that we can spend with yourselves to implement the configuration into your environment, and then additional time that we can spend on making any custom changes or additions to maybe extended visibility that you're looking for.
Yeah, and just to build on that other question I was talking about a second ago. So the question around what's needed for this. So by its very nature, it's built on Power BI, so you do need to have Power BI Pro licenses, or if you're really, really lucky, the Power BI Premium, but at least the Pro licenses to be able to view and upload this to the web interface as you just saw. Otherwise, you'd be restricted to running it just in the local desktop option. Now, it's built primarily around just going and requesting these directly from the Microsoft Graph. However, for larger environments, we do have a logic app, which we tend to put in just to handle some more of the retries on the graph because they throttle it, so we can back off and still get that large amount of data and return it back to the actual application via the logic app side. So it just basically requires a bit of licensing on the Power BI side, and then depending on your size, but roughly if you just start to get above 2,500 to 3,000 devices onwards, we would probably look at asking if we could put a logic app into an Azure subscription for yourselves just to handle some of the throttling and workloads. Is this report available as a perpetual license to implement, and how do we get updates? That is a good question. So currently it is sat as a perpetual license. So it's a one-off purchase. We'll implement it for yourselves, get you up and running. Now, at that point, unless there is major breaking issues with it, then there's no additional updates on top of that, with it just being a one-off purchase side. We are currently working on more of a perpetual side, in which case it'll be more of a subscription basis, where that would include updates, etc., as well within that side. I think that's the majority of the questions for now.
Yeah. Cool. So if anyone wants to know more about the Intune Reporting Solution itself, please feel free to contact us directly. We'll pop you an email across after this session and simply hit reply, and we'll be able to reach out to you to provide some more insights. But really, thank you for joining. We'll send you out a recording within the next 24 hours. Feel free to kind of share it with the team and colleagues. We'll also follow up with any kind of useful information and resources to support today's session. But thank you for joining.
Thank you all.